Well, hey, everybody. Getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest. Let's do this. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 138 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Happy Tuesday. Hope you're doing well. We're recording the show here on Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, which will become an important date on today's big topic later on in the show. So hang tight to that. But I hope the show finds you well. I hope you're doing great. And happy Tuesday. Almost spring. We're going to spring forward this weekend here in the United States. So we'll get that extra hour of daylight, which will be very much appreciated here in the Midwest. And I'm sure all around the country, we'll get a little extra time outside in the evenings after work. Baseball, we have spring training going on down in Florida. So in a few weeks, they'll be making their way up north. We'll have some Cardinal baseball here in St. Louis. Of course, we have the basketball tournaments, the conference tournaments starting tomorrow. I messed that all up on this week's podcast. I think that it started this week, the NCAA tournament. I forget which week we're recording for some weeks because we record early. We're always recording into the future, and I forget what week the shows are going to come out. So I apologize for that. I make myself sound like a fool on this week's podcast, like I don't know anything about basketball. I'm so sorry about that, but yeah. So we have the conference tournaments this week, and then next week we'll have the big dance starting on Wednesday. So in 8 days, the playing games will happen. Then Thursday, the big dance will start, and all the madness will begin. So let's talk about what's going on here in the Be Our Guest podcast studio. So today we're going to talk about this in just a minute, but it's a big day here in the Be Our Guest podcast studios today, March 7th. It's my wife's big birthday, so we're going to have a big celebration as soon as she gets home from work here, probably in about an hour. So her big gift is upstairs. Can't wait to give that to her. We're going to go out. She gets to pick dinner tonight. She hasn't decided exactly where she wants to go, but wherever she calls it, that's where we're going for dinner. And going to have a fun night here. So we're excited to celebrate Pam. We're going to have her family party and all that this weekend. So we're excited for that. We got we ordered a cake from the place we got our wedding cake from back a long time ago. So that was the most tasty cake we'd ever had. It's not a wedding cake. It's going to be a big sheet birthday cake, but that'll be good. And yeah, so stand by. Maybe we'll post on the socials what she got for her birthday, but I've been saving up quite a long time to give her this gift, which she never asks for anything. And that's the greatest thing about Pam. It's always about everybody else. But I've been saving up for quite a long time to give her this present. Been putting some away, tax refunds the last few years. Um, all my travel bookings and stuff. I put some away for the last couple of years, and to be able to give her kind of a big gift for a big birthday. So we'll see. I'm excited to give her this present tonight. So I can't wait to do that. I didn't want to give it to her this morning before school. Mallory goes to school way early. It would have been rushed. So tonight we'll do that. So I'm excited for this. She needs to get home from school here soon. Anyway, so what did we do over the weekend? What's been going on here in the Be Our Guest podcast studios? Last weekend we went to Chicago. So Mallory got to fill in for her old cheer squad, Platinum Athletics. They had an athlete go down with an injury about 6 weeks ago, I believe it was. And they have we're in competition season. It starts in about December, and of course you guys know from the podcast that it all culminates with the championships that are called the Summit down at Walt Disney World in early May. And what you do is these cheerleading squads go to all these competitions from December until late April, mid-April. And what you do is you're always competing against other gyms. You're trying to get what's called a bid to Summit. You have to be invited to go to Summit. You have to get a bid. And you can get different kinds of bids. You can get an at-large bid. You can get a wild card bid. And those kinds, which means you get to go, but you got to pay your own way. You got to pay for your own hotels. You got to pay for your own entry fees. Everybody has to pay for their own air, stuff like that. But all that stuff, you have to pay for it on your own. They also offer if you win one of these competitions, and each competition will say we have so many at large bids, so many wild card bids up for grabs, and then they have partial paid bids, which means they'll pay for like 50% of the entry fee for the team, and they will pay part of the hotel costs for the team. And then the kind of the greatest thing to get is a fully paid bid to Summit, which means your entire entry fee for your team is paid for, and your hotel is paid for the team, for all the girls to get free hotels. So she was filling in this weekend. Her team had an at-large bid, so they already were going to Summit. So that was exciting, but they were trying to do what's called an upgrade. They were trying to upgrade to a partial paid or a fully, obviously a fully paid bid would be pretty sweet. So we went up to Schaumburg, Illinois, which was it's a northwest suburb of Chicago. It's a great area. I love this place because there's a few reasons why I like going to this competition. We've gone about 4 or 5 times over the past few years. One, it's in a big convention center, but you stay in the hotel that is connected to the convention center. You never have to go outside to go to the hall. In some of these competitions, you have to like drive across town from your hotel every time they compete. That is a pain in the rear end. You got to park your car, it's cold. Nope. This one, you just go from your hotel room down the elevator, walk across the lobby, boom, you're in the convention center and you watch them cheer. And they have multiple stages going on at the same time. So it's a very nice hotel. It's a Renaissance hotel. So I like that. Great gym. So I could, have a treadmill to run on or walk on in the morning, restaurant, Starbucks, place to work. Cause I worked there in all throughout the time. Great hotel. So I enjoyed that. Got to see my daughter do all-star cheer. Now, you guys may know, you might say, well, Mike, wait a second. I thought Mallory was just doing high school cheer. Well, that's right. She was just filling in for an athlete that got hurt. So what happened was they contacted her about 6 weeks ago and said, we have somebody that got hurt. You used to be on this team. Can you come into the practices? We'll teach you we'll teach you the routine. They need, and the thing is, she has to be, Mallory's what's called a back spot. So she's one of the bases. So the girl that got hurt was a base. So obviously Mallory's not a flyer because she's super tall. So the girl that got hurt was a back spot. They were in the same spot. So um what happened was, she fills in for the same position. So if a flyer would have got hurt, Mallory wouldn't have been asked to come back to the team because she can't fly. But it just happened that Mallory was this position. So she came in, she learned the routine over the past 6 weeks, and she got to get, obviously she has the uniform from last year. They keep the same uniforms for 2 years at her gym, and they're in the second year cycle. So that was kind of lucky. So she had the uniform. We've been to Schaumburg a million times. She knew the girls because it was her team from last year. So boom, she got to go do a performance that we kind of missed it actually. I missed going to the competition. So it's kind of fun to go to Chicago. And the one thing though, I'll tell you about this. The weather has been great in St. Louis for the whole month of February. We're driving to Chicago from St. Louis. It's about a 4.5, 5 hour drive normally. It starts snowing about halfway there. You probably saw my Instagram. I mean, it was snowing for the Dickens about from Springfield to Joliet. The roads were terrible. Cars were all off in the ditches. We saw a box truck on its side. It was like a blizzard for about an hour and a half on the way up north. Of course, it only happened in the like 3 hour window that we were on Interstate 55 going to Chicago, which made it a white knuckle, super long drive. It should have taken 4.5 hours. It took about 7, which was brutal. But anyway, that's how it always goes, right? The only time you're going to travel, it snows. But that's what happened. So anyway, we get there. They compete. They had a great weekend. They did. So in cheerleading, the key word, and I've joked about this on the podcast, you want to hit zero, which means you want to hit 0 deductions because the judges are watching the competitors and they're looking for deductions. What have you missed? Like, have you missed? Because there's requirements in every routine. Like, you got to have 3 jumps of different kinds. You got to have, these kind of tumbling passes. You got to have these kind of stunts during the routine. You got to have this in your dance. And during all these requirements, if you don't do them right, you get deductions. So the goal for every routine, which is about 3 minutes long, you want to hit 0 deductions. And they hit 0 both days. So they were very excited. But the thing was, because we had a great competition, we had to stay late on Sunday night. Our last competition went until about 7 o'clock on Sunday night, and we had a 5 hour drive home, 4.5, 5 hour drive home, which meant we didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday night / Monday morning. But it was worth it because kicker, Mallory's team won their division. They won their division, so they got their medals and everything, and they got their rock star guitar that they got to bring home to the gym, a banner to hang in the gym. So Mallory's excited. The one competition she did this year, they won, which is super exciting. So I'm proud of Mallory, and that was fun. And so what happens is you don't find out if you get an upgraded bid or anything like that at the competition, because this is done on Monday, the following Monday. This was Sunday when they won. On Monday, you turn into this TV channel that's called Varsity TV, and they go through each competition around the country, because there's about 10 or 20 competitions in different places around the country. There was one in Orlando this weekend. There was one in Chicago. There was one in Atlanta. There was one in Arizona. And they go gym by gym, and they give out in each division the best of the best start getting bids. And so you watch this TV show. So all the girls go to their gym, they put it on the big screen, and they talk about, okay, from the Schaumburg GLCC competition, Great Lakes cheerleading competition, here are your bid winners. And here's the kicker. Mallory's team got a fully paid bid to Summit. So they're going to Summit. They upgraded to a fully paid bid, hotels paid for, so they can stay on property at Disney for free. And their registration fees are paid for, which are really expensive for Summit. Now, here's the thing. Mallory's not on the squad. She was just filling in. So we're not going to Summit. But I'm excited for her girls on the team. And that's going to be super fun for them in May. So we're super jazzed about the Diamond Squad at Platinum Athletics. Congratulations to them. And go win Summit this year. That'd be great. Now, the other thing we got to do while we were in Chicago, we got to use our season tickets for the University of Illinois Chicago Flames basketball team. That's right. For the first time, we got to see Paige's basketball team up in Chicago at the I believe it's the Credit Union One Arena right there off of the interstate on the University of Illinois Chicago campus. Beautiful arena. And it was their last home game against Murray State Racers, and they won. So it was very exciting to see Paige's team finish out the season, the last home game there, and the last game of the regular season with a victory. They got their 17th win of the season, because again, Paige is the director of basketball operations from this team. She came with the new head coach from Mizzou. They went up to Chicago. They've done great things. Last year, the squad only won 3 games for the entire season. This year, they've won 17 games so far, going into their conference tournament, which starts Thursday night at 8:30. They play Valparaiso up in Moline, I think it's Moline, Iowa, somewhere up there. But it's the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, and looking for great things. They get 18 wins or more this year. They only had 3 last year. This team has done wonderful things. So proud of my oldest daughter, Paige. Got to watch from the front row. The Flames take on Murray State and do just a great job. So it was a great weekend to be a dad, right? I put on Instagram, we got a lot of W's. The Flames won. Got to see Paige really just do an outstanding job with her team this entire year. I couldn't be more proud of Paige. She has developed into a wonderful young woman who leads other young women athletes, into futures that are going to be outstanding. And then Mallory, I got to see her, perform at her highest level, and they won up in Chicago in a really difficult competition. It was just amazing. I'm so proud of my girls, and it was just a good weekend to be in Chicago despite the weather. So it was totally worth it. So we're here. My heart's full. I can't be more happy. I got a great podcast because of friends like you. You allow me to do what I love. I love podcasting. I love talking about Disney, and I love getting to get to hear, because this gives me an outlet just to talk to you about just dad stuff, about being, a dad, and about, memories and stuff. So thanks for just, allowing me to talk about that. It was a fun weekend up in Chicago. So we're back, and we get to celebrate a big birthday tonight. So I'm super excited about that. Pam is actually texting me that her school's on a lockdown, so that's never good. So that's why I was a little distracted there for a couple minutes. So we'll follow up with that here in a second. But let's get to the feedback from last week's show. And last week we talked about bowling alley memories, because I saw that Pete Weber meme keep coming up for some reason. And you guys had a lot of feedback about bowling alleys. So John Luther, John, what's going on? He says, last week I couldn't think of anything about my parents having side jobs, but both did. My mother, along with my aunt and my grandmother, would buy things from yard sales, then resell them at antique shows. All 3 of them knew what to look for and had fun finding the diamonds in the rough of people's yard sale stuff. My father helped a friend of his start up a company selling ham radio equipment. My friend went to it full time, but my father only helped out sometimes after that point. I thought they both did this because of the enjoyment rather than the extra income, but that could have just been my perception. Growing up, our bowling alley was a very short walk from my junior high and high school, and it was definitely one of the places my friends and I hung out. I don't know that we ever bowled, but they had two rooms with probably 30 video games and some pinball machines. That was what made it our destination, especially before anyone got their driver's license, before we could go any further from home. That's right. I mean, the bowling alleys were mini arcades back in the day, right? I mean, both bowling alleys, Crust and Dick Weber that we went to, they had a it was kind of a scary side room that had the arcade games, and I'm sure crazy stuff happened in there. I was little, but I'm sure it did. Yeah, great. And I've always wanted to get into ham radio, but I mean, I do 5 podcasts a week. I'm always talking, so I don't know if I'd want to talk even more, but I'd love to listen in, and I'd love to get my ham radio license. That is one of my goals, maybe in retirement, is to get into ham radio. I think that'd be very fun. All right, Carrie Good has some feedback. Wow, the bowling alley conversation took me back to the late 70s, early 80s as well. I didn't even think about it until you pointed it out. My mom was in a bowling league, and my brother and I would go to the daycare while she was bowling. When I look back on it, seems odd to have a daycare in a bowling alley. Okay, Carrie, thank you. Because both bowling alleys had a daycare room. It both Crest Bowl and Dick Weber Lanes had daycare like rooms. It wasn't like a daycare center. It was just a room with like toys and like probably a 16-year-old kid that was in charge of everything. But I think that is so crazy now that I look back on it. But it is true. They had them. They had them. And I'm glad, Carrie, that you verify that your bowling alley had one too. Yes. This is why I love this. I love your feedback because it makes me know that I'm not just like losing my mind. Michael Corbett has some more feedback. He says, Mike, I really feel for you and your headaches. I had headaches from age 5 to 12 because of a milk allergy, and then again from age 15 after falling on the ice and getting knocked out. My salvation came when I found Excedrin tension headache medication. It was great because if I can catch it early, lying down with a cold compress on my forehead in a dark room also helps. I've tried that Excedrin migraine and it used to work, but it doesn't work anymore. What it is, I think it is because I had 3 really bad concussions when I was a speed skater. Really bad wrecks. I mean, so bad that I hit the back of my head and I got nosebleed one time. So I think that's where they come from. So I am going to look into seeing what's going on with this. Michael continues. Being a teacher, my family sold fireworks for most of my kids' childhoods to pay for extra trips like Disneyland and later for college tuition. Michael, that is so funny because here in St. Louis, all the fireworks stands, and there's a lot of them around us, are all run by teachers. When I was growing up, the PE teachers in our school district, Hazelwood School District, all the PE teachers owned all the fireworks stands around us, and they still do. And now the teachers in Mallory School District, even some of her friends' parents own some of the fireworks stands around us, all run by educators. I don't know what it is with teachers and fireworks, but it's a great combo. And that's so true that you said that. I'm cracking up because that is exactly who sells all the fireworks here in St. Charles in St. Louis. I don't know why, but that is how it is here too. Michael, thanks for the feedback. Len, my good friend out in Maryland, says, hi, Mike. Following up on the odd jobs conversation, my dad had some pretty entertaining second and third jobs when I was growing up. Being a dad myself, I can now understand the sacrifices he was making to support our family of 6. One job was a concession manager at a local drive-in theater. When we tagged along, we got to stand outside and watch the movie or provide a helping hand during intermission. His other odd extra job was working as an usher at a large multi-purpose arena. That means we tagged along and saw concerts like Kiss and events like wrestling. Being an usher and being able to go backstage, he always told us the stories of how wrestlers palled around backstage. His real job was as an industrial engineer at the GM engine assembly plant in Flint, Michigan. I grew up just outside Flint in Schwartz Creek, Michigan. Yeah, isn't it funny? Like we think our parents had these jobs because it was fun. And some of these side jobs probably were. My dad loved playing drums. So I'm sure he loved that. But the extra income and the extra hours he would work on top of, because my dad did physical concrete work all day. He'd go to work early and come home at about 4 or 5 o'clock, and he was out in the sun and the weather and pouring concrete all day, physical, hard labor. And then he would do a second job, but it was because he wanted to give us a better way of life. And I really appreciate that now as an adult. Very cool. Trisha up in Wisconsin, Buffalo Phil's, she says. That's the Train restaurant in the Dells. They have a massive Star Wars Lego display in one of the dining areas. Our local bowling alley had burnt orange shag carpet on the walls to deaden the sound because it was attached to a restaurant that everyone went to for the Friday fish fry. Sadly, it's been paved over, so we bowl via the Nintendo Switch now. Sad. They paved they paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Isn't that how the song lyric goes? I know. My old skating rink that I ran for years, and I grew up in Spinning Wheels roller rink, got knocked down, and it's now Gold's Gym. So sad. Yeah. What are they thinking? So sad. And Buffalo Phil's rocks. I love that place. Dennis Keithley, my good friend down in Texas. Congrats to Ricky on the birth of her baby girl. You were right about being at a different place in your life now. Just yesterday, I was helping my wife assemble a diaper cake for a baby shower. I haven't even handled a diaper in over a dozen years, but the smell just brought back everything that I thought I had forgot. I know I haven't touched a diaper in a decade. Dennis, I don't want to touch a diaper. It's awesome that you helped out, though. As for bowling alleys, Dennis continues. I used to go to a bowling alley in Ellisville, Missouri, growing up, right down the road from me. There was a skating rink next door. Yes, I think it was called Wheels of Fun, I believe, because I still look at that building when I used to go to my brother and sister-in-law's house in Baldwin. I used to go to that skating. I went to every skating rink in St. Louis because I just loved the industry when I ran a skating rink. And yeah, Wheels of Fun right off Manchester. But anyway, he says there was a skating rink right next door and a small movie theater next to that. I remember going bowling with friends on occasional Saturdays. I'd always have a quarter to call my parents from the payphone to come pick me up when we were done. The bowling was fun, but they also had some of the most current arcade games, and I love checking them out. That was where I was introduced to Super Mario Brothers. Down here in North Texas, I have 4 bowling alleys within an easy driving distance. 2 of them are part of the big chains, Pin Stack and Main Event. The other 2 are smaller alleys, Allen Bowl and Plano Bowl. I don't go bowling as often anymore, but my kids have always enjoyed it. I think the bowling game for the Nintendo Wii had something to do with that. I agree. And we have a Main Event that just came in. Well, Dennis will get this. It's in Chesterfield. It's right across the river from us. And we haven't been there yet, but I got to get out there. It looks awesome. It's one of those it's got all kinds of stuff going on inside there with cool food. So I got to get out there. But when we got the Nintendo Wii, Paige and I got this for Christmas, the Christmas right before Mallory was born. Mallory was born January of 2008. And so we got this the Christmas of 2007, I want to say. And I'm telling you what, I bowled so much on the Wii. I remember one night because I kept trying to get that, like, if you had a 200 average, your ball would have like crystal, like little decorations on it or something. I bowled one night so many times that I had to go take Tylenol so I could keep bowling because my arm was about to fall off of my body. But I just kept going because I wanted to get a higher average. And then for my birthday the next year, we had a Nintendo Wii bowling tournament for my birthday, and I even got a trophy for the winners. No joke. I was serious about Wii bowling back in the day. I'm going to hook that thing up. I'm going to have to, I have a Switch. Can you do it for the Switch? Because I have the Wii. I can still hook up the Wii too. Yeah, I'm doing this. We're going at it. Okay. Michelle Camber, another piece of feedback here, says, my parents both had odd jobs when I was growing up. My dad was an on-call tow truck driver overnight and on weekends. So we'd often get called away. He'd often get called away at odd hours. I remember sometimes going on calls with him, and I thought that was cool. He used a lot of that extra money to take us to Disney World. My mother drove a school bus for many years. This got us a big discount on tuition for the small Christian school we went to and wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise. Michelle, that's awesome because my grandma was a school bus driver for the Ferguson Florissant School District where my wife and I both taught. I remember each year before school started, she would get her route and then we'd do practice runs to figure out the best order of pickups to give everyone an estimated time. My parents were in bowling leagues, so I spent a lot of time in the bowling alleys as well. I remember the child care room. And then when I was a little older, I got to just hang out. We have fond memories of the bowling alley French fries. Yes, bowling alley food was the jam. So skating rink food. You had like bowling alley fries, you had the pizza at our, we had toasted ravioli in St. Louis at our bowling alleys. Even the like, I don't know, like hamburgers and stuff, they weren't great, but they were awesome, if you know what I mean. Bowling alley food was great. We even had great pizzas. She says, continuing, in high school, our bowling alley turned a few lanes into duck pin bowling, and we would hang out there often. Good memories. I have no idea what duck pin bowling is. So, Michelle, let me know. Duck pin bowling. I have no clue. And finally, Jody Benning out in Cincinnati says, ugh, the smoke filled bowling alley. So much smoke in the air. I even remember the built in ashtrays in the lanes. So gross. Yeah, the ashtrays were built in right there where you would keep score. Now, this is how old I am, right? You had to keep score at the bowling alley. Again, here's a good memory. They didn't do automatic scoring. I remember when that became a thing. You had to know how to keep score. Strike is 10 plus the next two balls. A spare is 10 plus the next ball. And when you would pay for your bowling or whatever, they would give you it was like a overhead projector, right? They give you the piece of clear plastic and you would get the grease pencil or whatever that kind of pencil was, and you would keep score. It project up above the lane. No, go kidding. Like it was an overhead projector, basically. I'm a teacher, so I was good at that eventually. But that's how we kept score with those magic pencils. It wasn't computerized back where I bowled. No way at Crest Bowl did they have computerized scoring back in the day. No, it was a grease pencil and you just filled it out right there as you went. That's how did you guys do that? I did that. Feedback, please let me know if you did that. Or am I just older than Moses? That's probably, and I am. Anyway, Jody continues. My mom was a STAHM, stay at home mom, I guess, and was in the ladies bowling league. I vividly remember the child care drop off area. We watched Tom and Jerry cartoons. The bowling alley was also the only place where, upon occasion, if I had any coins, I played video games, Pac Man or Donkey Kong. Solid choices, Jody. The other thing I think about bowling is back when we didn't have cable and when it was in a sports lull and a professional bowlers were the only thing on TV. Now that was the worst. I love sports of all sorts, but that was not entertaining. I disagree. We used to watch. So again, here's another fun memory. You guys remember the TV show Wide World of Sports on ABC? I used to love that show, especially the intro. Wide World of Sports. The guy coming down the ski jump and he would crash. I can still picture that to this day. How that guy lived through that, I have no clue. But like that was a big deal to watch. That was like ESPN before ESPN back in the day. And a lot of times they would show bowling on that show. But the thing was, they would record bowling tournaments in St. Louis at Dick Weber Lane. So sometimes you would see on national TV our local bowling alley, which was 5 minutes away. Anyway, Jody wraps up. I never got into bowling. We only have taken the kids a few times. However, my daughter's high school has a co-ed bowling team. It's good to see there's still some kids interested in playing. And I got to say this, shout out to Mark Yerkes, one of our patrons and great friends of the podcast. His daughter she was a high school bowler and was an amazing bowler. Like she bowled on a team in high school and just killed it. She was a great bowler. So there are high school bowling athletes that do this, and his daughter was one of them. So it's very cool. So that's feedback for this show. So if you have any feedback, and please let me know, it wasn't the only one to use the overhead projector and the grease pencil and all that stuff. Just come over to patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Leave your feedback about this topic or any other topic. So real quick, because this show is running extremely long and I have a exciting night ahead of me. But 20 years ago today was a very special day for me. It was the day that I asked Pam, my wife, out on our first date. And I thought I'd share that story real quick here on the show. So as you know, and I've talked about this over the years with the podcast, because we're getting ready to celebrate 15 years of the Be Our Guest podcast here in about 2 weeks. Pam and I were teachers together. We taught sixth grade together. We taught next door to each other. And our show numbers over the last couple of weeks, I almost did a show about that because show number 135 and 137 could have been about Wedgwood Elementary because I taught in classroom 135 and Pam taught in classroom 137. And I remember that because, I mean, that was our home. Like everything, when you're a teacher, you are associated by your classroom number. And we kept the same classrooms for years and years and years. So I was always 135. Pam was always 137. We were next door neighbors because the other classrooms were across the hall. 136 and 138 were across the hall from us. Dave, my good buddy Dave, was in 136 and Rosemary was in 138. Anyway, so how the story goes, how the, if this was Taylor Swift and she was writing a song about how Pam and Mike got together 20 years ago today, went on our first date. Pam, for her 30th birthday, was having a big retro party at her sister and brother-in-law and sister-in-law's house. And it was going to be like a disco 70s party. And so I was invited. And so I remember going to this retro shop and getting a leisure suit. Now, this leisure suit would come into play with the podcast later on because I wore the same leisure suit on, I think it was the Fantasy when we did Podcast Cruise 5 or 4. And I had my afro and my green leisure suit, but I got that for this retro 70s party for Pam's 30th birthday celebration. And the thing I remember was we were just, I had been friends with Pam for years. We had taught next door to each other. We had done so much together. We sponsored the student council together. We were great friends. I mean, we hung out constantly. We had hung out as friends for years. But I remember telling the teacher next door to us, we had 4 6th grade teachers on our team. It was myself, Pam, and 2 older ladies that were amazing teachers, Rosemary and Jane. And I remember going into Jane's classroom one day after school. I always hung out with Pam after school, Pam and Paige. Paige was little at this time. She was like 3 or 4. She'd always come in after, she'd come in and she would play on the computers, these old ancient Apple computers. And while we were, grading and stuff like that until we could leave school. But the thing was, I remember going into Jane's room on the other side. She was in 133. And this was because Pam's birthday obviously is March 7th. And this was probably in February. And I knew we were having this party. And I remember telling Jane, I said, Jane, I closed the door and I said, I got to tell you something. I said, I think I'm going to ask Pam out on a date. I said, now I need your advice because Jane was one of the smart, and she still is, one of the smartest ladies, teaching wise or just worldly, of anybody I knew. I trusted her advice about anything. She was just a smart, wise woman and still is. And I remember walking in, I said, I got to ask you a question because I trust you. I trust your advice more than anybody. I said, now be honest with me. I said, is this a bad idea or is this a good idea? I said, because we are really good friends, Pam and I. I said, we are really good friends. We also are really good teachers together because our classes did everything together. It was Bullington's class and Rallman's class. We always did everything. And the whole school knew it. Like it was a joke. Like, because we were next door. Like everybody wanted to be in Rallman or Bullington's class because they did everything together. And that was just kind of how it was in our school. And we, like I said, we did student council together. We our classes got to do a lot of cool stuff because we were like the 2 young teachers, 6th grade teachers at the time. How times change. But I remember telling Jane, I said, I think I'm going to ask Pam out on a date. She'll probably say no because Pam was way out of my league. Let's be honest. I knew she was way out of my league, but I told Jane, I said, here's the deal. I said, I know we're great friends and I know we'll continue probably to be great friends either way. I said, but I'd just like to take her for her 30th birthday out to a great just dinner. That's it. We can go out to dinner. And I asked her and I said, what do you think? Like, is that a terrible idea? And Jane's like, could be. You guys are great friends, and you sometimes, when you take that and you try to go to the next level and you try to date and, start a relationship, that could be a bad idea. But she says, I've seen you guys together for years and you guys are great friends. She goes, and I think you guys would make a great couple. I said, but I don't know. She probably won't even accept, but you'll never know until you ask, right? So I remember getting this cool card, cheesy card, probably at the Hallmark store, and filling it out and telling her, I've always loved having you as a friend and I'd love to take you out on a date for your 30th birthday. And I said, that'd be my birthday gift to you. We'll go to a really fancy dinner, the fanciest I can find in St. Louis, if you would like, totally up to you. And she said yes. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it, but she said yes. And so on March 7th of 2003, that's our first date. That's when she accepted. And I remember taking her to, at the time, now this place doesn't, it's still physically there. And you've seen it. If you've ever watched a Cardinals game or seen any pictures of St. Louis, there is a hotel right on the riverfront of downtown St. Louis. It's a circular building about 30 stories tall. It used to be called the Millennium Hotel. Before that, it was called the Stouffer's Hotel. But at the top, there was a restaurant, and this restaurant rotated 360 degrees while you were dining. It was kind of like Garden Grill, but you would sit at the and it was a super fancy restaurant. And you get steaks and seafood and stuff. And I just remember, I don't remember much about this meal because I was so nervous. I was dining. I was on a date with Pam because I mean, she was so far out of my league, but I was so excited to be able to take her to a date, on a date because she was the best teacher I knew. She was such a great friend. She was beautiful. She was a great mom. I mean, I knew all these things, but I never thought she'd go on a date with me. I never thought she'd say yes, but she did. And I couldn't believe it. So we go downtown, go to this fancy restaurant, which was, I had no idea what I was going to a fancy. I don't go to fancy restaurants, but I, got my best clothes that I had. She put on a beautiful outfit. I picked her up. We went downtown St. Louis. I never go downtown St. Louis. Went to the top of this huge hotel, sat in this fancy restaurant, ordered fancy foods, got some kind of steak or something, sat there and just talked and ate this meal as we rotated all and saw the skyline of St. Louis, saw Busch Stadium and saw the arch and saw the river and, rotated all around, the hotel, it's still there. You can see it you see it every Cardinals game, but it's closed at this point. But I mean, that's how our story started. And today we're 20 years down the line. I'm still the luckiest guy in the world. Still, I can't believe she said yes 20 years ago today to our first date. It's been awesome ever since. I mean, think about all the stuff like, we have a family, Paige, Mallory, a house, I was a teacher back then. I got to start a podcast since then. She believed in me and told me to give it a try, let me become a travel agent. She saw me through COVID when she didn't tell me to quit being a travel agent, go back to teach. And she said, yeah, you'll make it. Hang in there. Just be creative. She's always there for all of us. And it was 20 years ago today. Pretty cool stuff. Taylor Swift should write a song about that. So I just want to share that today. Not really much you can get feedback on, but it's funny how a Hallmark card and a question can change your life. And it was 20 years ago today. I never thought she would say yes to a date. She was so far out of my league and still is. It's way out of my league. But sometimes you just get lucky. And I've been lucky for 20 years. Every morning I've woken up, I've gotten lucky. So there's my story. 20 years ago today. March 7th, 2003. So share your feedback. I'm sure you have a story like mine. Give it a quick one. Patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Let me tell the world next week. Quick. Let me tell a story. I'd love to hear it. So we're going to celebrate tonight and have a good time because she deserves it. And she's the most amazing woman in the world to me. So we're going to have a good evening. So we'll get back together again next Tuesday and have another great show. But thank you so much for supporting me and allowing me to put the podcast out because I get to live my dream in so many ways every day. And it's because of your support. So thank you so much. And you guys have a great evening and a great week. So stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.